Welcome back to Teachings and Tangents. We'll continue our series on the chakras, Chakra 101. Today we are on the fifth chakra, our throat chakra. Now, this chakra is called the throat chakra because that wheel, that energy center, is located right here. It's said to be sort of located behind the thyroid. And when it spins, it is spinning and it is encompassing our mouth, our throat, our the lower throat here, our jaw, our whole neck, muscles, front, back, everywhere, right? So when somebody is in balance with their throat chakra, when someone's been working on it, they really have this ability to communicate authentically. Now, we all know people who can, what do they say? Spin a good yarn, right? Talk really well and speak fluidly and can hold conversations. But are they being authentic? I don't know. Are they being true to themselves? Are they speaking their truth? Are they speaking from a place that is divinely guided, divinely inspired, right? From their highest self? Maybe, maybe not. So it's not so much what you're saying or how you're saying it, or if you're able to get on stage and captivate your audience. It is that intention behind what you're saying. Is it true? Is it authentic? Right? What is that motivation for speaking? What is your motivation for communicating, right? And that's a big part of our throat chakra. Is it is not just about speaking, right? We can really start to um, hone in and tune our chakra, our fifth wheel here, by learning how to communicate authentically, by speaking our truth, right? But it's also in how we communicate. And part of communicating is listening. And so are we active and mindful listeners, right? Are we honestly paying attention to what the other person in our conversation is saying? Or are we ego driven and we're thinking of that next sentence, right? How are we going to respond to this? Or sometimes people, this is not a diagnosis. We know this already. I don't need to go into saying that we're not diagnosing anything. But what I've found is that people with different ADHD symptoms, different attentive disorders, right? We tend to communicate by way of connection, right? And so when someone's telling us a story, we actually start to think about how we may have had this experience and want to share, right? So it's been a really neat practice of mine, having identified that I have some strong ADHD traits or whatever characteristics, is that I've had to pull back and work on my communication skills so I'm actually listening to the people that I'm speaking with in my personal life, right? Instead of going, how can I create a connection? Because that's how my brain has always learned to make connections. Oh, that happened to me. Oh, this. Oh, that reminds me of that. Really pulling back and working on that mindful, active listening as well as communicating, being sure that I'm saying what I mean to say and meaning what I say, right? So communication is not just about this one way, like how we're talking. It's actually how we're listening to. So when we want to strengthen this wheel, we often hear, and you'll hear it, Google it right now or look it up on YouTube, throat chakra work. Speak your truth. Speak your truth. Well, not necessarily, right? Maybe speak up more and listen more, right? But it's a balance. That communication skill is a balance. Okay. So it's blue. We've all seen the throat chakra as this gorgeous blue. And you probably guessed it because since we started at the root and we're on our way up, it is this rainbow, right? So I'm actually going to share my screen right away today so I don't get off on my little tangents. Although that is why I named it Teachings and Tangents, because I reserve the right to go off on tangents. So here we are again. We're up here at our blue throat chakra. We're two away from the end of our series, right? So we've started with the root, our sacral, our solar plexus, heart chakra, and today we're on the throat chakra. If you haven't watched the past four, go ahead, or you can start now and start with us on the throat and go back whenever you want. I believe if you landed on this one as your first video with us, this is the one you're meant to see for right now. And again, here we have just the line of it. And today we will be talking about the throat chakra. All right, here we go. So, like I just said, talk less, listen more. It's not necessarily, I guess, yeah, talk less, listen more is a cute little phrase to try to remember our throat chakra, but you can, you don't have to talk less, right? You want to make sure you're speaking with intention and what is the motivation behind what you're saying and what's the motivation behind how you're listening, right? So we have, the symbol here, right? And we've talked about the lotus petals for all the rest. And we'll start off with this center diagram. And I don't know if I even mentioned that inside of all the symbols is the Sanskrit symbol of this chakra. I don't know a lot about Sanskrit or about its traditions and languages and well, it is a language, so I don't even attempt to pronounce it, but in case you're wondering, that is the symbol. So here we have an inverted triangle, and we want to actually think of it as not that they're a right way triangle, right, with the point top up, and then this one is down, it's inverted. It's just a downward facing one. And it's when we look at the triangle, whether it's upward or downward, it's just its channel, right? And so this triangle pointing downward is letting us know that it's a channel inward, right? It's a channel into our consciousness, right? Into that soul body, right? Into that mind, our true highest self, right? Inward. And that's where we can actually find the way that we are meant to communicate, and what we want to say is through going into that, tapping into our authentic self, like listening with intention and guidance. I often like to teach the chakras by, if we're talking about the throat chakra, and this gets easier once we've done all 7 chakras, is you really work in tandem with the chakra above and the chakra below. And so this is where we have our throat chakra, and we've talked about our heart and that guidance, that intuitive guidance of both our heart. And once we get into our third eye, we'll talk more about that, and where our voice and our ears, where we can hear and talk and listen and speak through our inner guidance and our outer guidance. It's actually such an amazing way to go when you go forth and learn more about all of the chakras, is to use them together. So you'll notice the circle inside of our channel to our consciousness, and the circle inside of this one is representate. Oh, there's like a little extra dot here. Anyways, it is the full moon, and the full moon, it has a meaning of abundance and completion, right? So when we speak our truth, we are connecting with our higher power, our highest self, that highest divine universal force, right? And so that creates possibility and abundance. And you'll see this word possibility, endless abundance coming up more in our slides around this chakra. Is that this connection from our highest self straight into our soul body inside of us and speaking our truth creates abundance, creates possibility, right? It's endless. So now we have the lotus petals. 16 for the throat chakra. So there's a few, just like all of them, different aspects. I've never been too into the symbols. Um I know basics, that's why I'm teaching 101, but the 16, there's 16 vowels in the Sanskrit alphabet, and that's what these all represent in a Hindu Ayurvedic teaching of the chakras. In a more scientific way, you can actually correlate these 16 to the 8 vertebrae, and there's each has nerve endings, nerves coming out of each vertebra. So you have 16 cervical nerves in this area. And so that's two little ways we can look at all of our lotus flower here for our throat chakra. And you'll notice, yep, up here, little blue dot. All right, so we mentioned the location being our throat, our neck, our jaw, our mouth. And so when we think about all of this region, right, and we break it down into our mind, body, and soul, that's how we can say with our mind, what is out of balance in our throat chakra? So when I think about the connection between my subconscious and my conscious mind and this area, right? I'm thinking, okay, I'm speaking my truth, or I'm hiding my truth. Maybe I am omitting things about myself because I don't want other people to judge me, right? Or keeping secrets from other people that deserve my truth, right? So we're looking at our mind and that subconscious level. What in this area tells me it's imbalance? If I'm able to speak my truth, say, hey, I appreciate you, or hey, that really bothered me and I want to talk more about it, right? Being honest with ourselves and others, honoring that inner voice, right? Saying, something doesn't seem right. I'm going to say something. My husband and I this weekend were watching that show, What Would You Do? And that's what it's all about. Like, I was like, this is really stressful, but so they set up little scenarios and it's the hidden camera, right? But they weren't funny scenarios. They were like mean scenarios where they were expecting the people who didn't know they were being videoed to speak up, right? And you had certain people that spoke up right away and you could actually see their whole body getting infuriated. And I was like, this kind of mean. But that if you're able to, in situations where you're not on candid camera, speak up, right? And think about how you're speaking and what your intent on that communication is, right? And how you're listening. We talked about that, this whole area, how we're speaking and how we're listening. Then if we think about our body, when we think about a healthy mouth, right? We think, nice fresh breath. Even some people who brush their teeth 3 times a day still might have an odor. There might be some sort of throat imbalance going on, right? Um, or if you tend to get cold sores, right? Like, so it's like how, when we look at that physical part of our body, when it's healthy, when our throat is clear and healthy and there's not a lot of mucus, or do you have chronic, what is that? Strep throat, chronic sore throats, chronic strep throats, chronic ear aches, chronic fluid in your ear, right? there is a possibility that you are holding back. You're holding on to all that, right? When we think about soul, we think about times in our lives when we're told, just shove it down, right? Don't say anything. Don't say that to them. That will hurt their feelings, right? That pushing down of our feelings is directly related to um imbalance in this throat chakra. You often hear people say, "Oh my God, to say that, I feel like I'm going to be sick," right? All of that. I don't love it, but like I love when it happens when I am going to say something and like I choke a little or I cough or I need to clear my throat. It's like something is off, right? My throat is you have a reaction to this. Somatic work is extensive and it's scientific and it's proven that there's parts that correlate to each other, right? And one of them is the throat, is when we feel we are holding back our truth, holding back what we really want to say, we will cough because it's in direct conflict with our highest self. Our highest self is saying, honor yourself, speak your truth. And our ego is saying, be quiet, don't say that, because our ego is like safe, 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 but it keeps us, we talked about this last week, I think, keeps us safe at the expense of ourself, right? So now number 5, I just started adding this and perhaps if I do these slides again, I'll add more. But number 5, because I got some feedback that people were really loving the numerology and angel numbers with it. So our 5th chakra, number 5 means freedom, change, curiosity, right? Once we get curious of what our authentic self is wanting and what is saying, we have this sense of freedom, right? And we communicate we communicate with the world, with this existence, the existence beyond, the ether. We communicate with our 5 senses, and this is how we experience the world. This is how we communicate, right? We're touching, we're feeling, we're sensing, we're smelling, we're tasting. That's a huge communication method for everybody, using our 5 senses, right? And that 6th sense too. So our mantras for our throat chakra is I speak, right? It's I speak, but we're not going to limit it to that because we can even say I listen. I listen with intention, right? I listen with curiosity. I listen to understand. So those are some, and we can say, I express myself honestly and clearly. I am worthy of being heard. I speak my truth and I live authentically. My words are powerful. I think that is beyond a mantra and affirmation for everybody to realize just how powerful the spoken word is, what the words actually mean, and how we can use them to manifest and create the desired outcome, right? Be very intentional with your words. Be very intentional with your communication skills, listening and speaking, right? There's often a phrase that I teach when I teach inside of the Life Designer Coaching Academy. We do group coaching, and it's such an important skill to learn that why am I speaking? Wait, WAIT. Why am I speaking? And know when to speak up and to sit back. It's a big skill. Not very many people learn it early on, right? We either learn to talk loud and be the loudest one in the room to get your feelings heard, or to shut up and sit down, right? So we don't learn that balance. We don't have this throat chakra balance because we're taught one or the other, and we're often taught one or the other is bad, right? So the element associated with our throat chakra is ether, is space. And this is the first time that we are getting into this original element. And this is where I mentioned before, it's this possibility, right? So you have the ether, and from the ether, we have earth, air, water, and fire. So from the ether, that fifth element, we have all of the four elements. It's this original element with the space for creativity, abundance, and possibility. So this houses our ability to create abundance for ourselves with our mind and our body and our soul through our communication skills. And the fun part that you all love. All right, so I bet you were like, what is she going to say for blue? There's not very many blue things, right? So we've got blueberries, blackberries, goji berries, seaweed and kelp, right? Because of this, everything, Lacey's coming to see us, everything within our throat is affected by water, right? So we've got water and teas, and this is where the salt and kelp and salt, you don't really want to drink salt water, but going for a swim in the ocean is so healing for your throat chakra, right? And purple broccolis and beets and any purpley bluey foods that you feel drawn to, right? But the number one thing would be water, straight up H2O. Anyway, water, herbal teas, right? So we have the planet is Mercury, and now Mercury is the communication planet, right? And Mercury is the god of communication as well. And this is why we have Mercury. And I found this awesome little picture of Mercury that's got, like, as you can see over there, it's got just a little bit of blue in it, just a little bit of gray and yellow. It's that, to me, it really represents that etherness to it, that space within communication. In our crystals, we have blue topaz, kyanite, blue lace, agate, angelite, aquamarine, any sort of blue stone that you feel called to. You can look up in I have different books here, but you can't really use them. But you can do Google or YouTube and look up the corresponding meanings to these blue stones, and then even dive further. How do I want to enhance my communication skills, right? Maybe it's through expression. Maybe it's through pulling in intuition and divine. So you can find stones that match the two, right? You've got a blue stone that is a connection to spirit. And then now you're working on your intuition to speak authentically, right? These yoga poses and stretches, I'm so excited. I've heard from at least 5 of you that this is one of your favorite parts of the whole series, which I mentioned before. I'm not a huge yoga class goer. I love doing my stretches and my poses, but I don't really do a flow. And as I've said probably 3 times already, this is not guidance. Do this at your own pace. Do this if it feels good. So our yoga poses and stretches are anything to do with your neck, right? Any kind of stretching that you want to do with your neck. Taking and breathing in and visualizing your esophagus opening up, right? Your trachea opening up, this whole region as you're breathing in and exhaling, bringing movement into it is such a gorgeous way. Visualizing the air coming in and cleaning out, like almost like pipe cleaning, right? Cleaning it out and allowing that space to have your authentic voice come through. We need it to be clear, your space. So then we have the fish pose, which is, I think you guys can see this little blue dot. So this fish pose, there's a couple different ways. This woman just has her shoulder and elbows at 90 degrees, and she's prompting herself up. This little guy here, you can't quite see it, and I'm not 100% sure he's even really doing it, but I wanted to show you this picture because what you can do is just take a pillow and put it towards the base of your spine and lie down and allow your chest to fall open, and you can keep your arms wherever they're comfortable. It's just that this archway that we're looking for with this pose, right? Do modifications, do whatever works. So even this fish pose, most intermediate to advanced yoga people will have their arms flat down with this wait, this is the plow. This is the plow pose right here. The fish pose is right here. So with this plow pose, I'm hoping you guys can see my little blue dot. Her arms are usually outstretched instead of at the base of her lower back there. And then, so that would be the advanced position of that. But you can even just prompt your legs up here. Oh, what is that? You could just prompt your legs up and holding with your hips. Another way that if you want to do this is push yourself right up against the wall. So now you're using the wall as balance and support. The cow pose, this is on all fours, and this is usually done together with cat and cow. So you're arching your back, and then you are taking and pushing down your belly, then pushing up your belly, then down your belly. So when your arched back is rounded out and your belly's pushed down, that's your cow pose. You don't have to do it with the cat, but most times in classes, they're doing them alternating, but you can just do the cow pose if you like. When we think of doing throat chakra journaling work, we always want to get curious. And just like we've said in past episodes, when we do these prompts, choose one, do them all, do whatever your heart feels like it wants to do. But we are really looking from a bird's eye view. We're not going to get into it and allow our ego to pull us down, because the point of this isn't to remain in our way of thinking, it's to move out of it, right? And so, what is it? Herbert, Albert Einstein, you can't solve a problem using the thinking that got you into the problem. So we need to pull back and allow our higher self, allow that intuitive voice that we hear help us to answer these, right? So we want to ask ourselves these questions. Do I communicate my truth and express my creativity? Do I? You can even say, how do I communicate my truth? How do I express my creativity? Creativity in this being your uniqueness, right? How you uh how you create, how you build your life, right? What makes you unique and how do you express that? How can I express myself more honestly and openly? Um Even the people that I've worked with that have amazing throat chakra balance and health have trouble sometimes with honesty and openness, right? Because we are human. So, how can we do this? How can we add a little bit more? Maybe there's a time that you can say um, to somebody, you know what? I don't, instead of making up a lie as to why you don't want to do something, right? How about it's just okay to say, I just don't want to, or I didn't really have fun last time, so I think I'm going to sit this one out, right? Where can we bring in just those little minute movements forward towards honesty and openness, right? I encourage people to say how it makes them feel, right? That lends itself to our authenticity, and it lends itself to us being open and honest and authentic, right? I really enjoyed going for that walk. Can we do it again? Right? Or I didn't enjoy the walk we went on. I enjoyed our conversation. Can we think of a different way to do it? Right? Really getting clear on what your intention. Remember, we're communicating with intention. So I know I'm in a healthy conversation when, right? Think back. When was the last time you were in a healthy conversation? When were you in a conversation where you weren't judging yourself, judging the other person, judging the other people, if it was a bunch of people, right? But when were you listening with curiosity and interest versus trying to figure out the next sentence? Or if something was said that you disagreed with, like just holding on to that part of it and not allowing space, right? When were you in a conversation that flowed and there was give and take and you were really listening? It's hard sometimes now because we pull out our phone during conversations with other people. We are so skilled at this multitasking, or rather, we think we are, right? So, how do you know you're in a healthy conversation? When was the last time you were in one? Do you mindfully listen, right? Am I a mindful listener? This one is a tough one sometimes. Do I embellish, distort, or exaggerate facts? I mean, who doesn't like a good story, right? But is it authentically driven? Or is there an ulterior ego motive to it, right? This is one that I do once a month, a 2 to 3 hour silent retreat. Now, that means I'm not silent. My senses are silent. Like I'm sitting there, right? It is a skill that I have been doing since COVID, since a class that I took back in 2020, where once a month I sit and you will be very surprised what thoughts come and go, right? You'll be very surprised when the thoughts come and you can't grab a pad and write it down because you're going to forget it. But then you realize maybe it didn't matter anyways, right? So, could you sit a whole day or a few hours in silence? True silence, silence of your ears, silence of your mouth, silence of your smell, silence of your touch. You're just sitting there. Can you do that? Do you think you could? It's, I mean, what is that? What, 2024? It's still challenging. It's still sometimes very challenging for me and probably not challenging for some people. I express myself authentically when. Well, I can tell you one thing. I express myself authentically when I'm feeling confident. When I'm not, I often don't. Sometimes I struggle with that. Sometimes I'm working on being authentic in things that may not be acceptable or appropriate for other people, right? Sometimes people don't want you to be authentically sad, authentically angry, authentic in any emotion, right? Our authenticity is not limited to being authentically happy, right? And that's something that sometimes we need to work on. That's this whole expression communication piece, right? Do I force my opinions? Do you allow yourself to be influenced by others' opinions? Two sides of sort of that same coin, forcing opinions, right? Am I desperate to be heard? There is this is all information and it's useful information to get curious and answer these questions because then that's where the healing is. If somebody is desperate to be heard and talks over people and talks very loudly, right? It is just a sign that they are not being heard. Oftentimes, when we're in conversations, in my groups, in the learning circle, I will have people say, I just don't feel understood. And now that's not saying that they're not speaking, right? They're just not feeling understood. So then that creates a desperate feeling to be heard, to be understood. And sometimes that can get us carried away because our vibration is of desperation and not of authenticity. It's not of a calm vibration that people want to meet us at. We're acting desperate to be heard, right? Please just listen to me. And that is 100% human and 100% okay. And we work through it and we find ways to bring that desperation down to or rather up to a higher vibration so that we're able to have honest and open communication with other people and ourselves, right? So I think that is it for our slideshows, and that is it for the throat chakra. So I wish you all throat healing. And remember that if you have any questions about either the four chakras that came before or this one, drop me an email, drop them down below. That's what this is about. And I will see you next week for our third eye chakra. I can't even believe we're almost to chakras 6 and 7. All right. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and let me know which question you are going to attempt to answer.